Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Wrap. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Wrap, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
Time to call a credit repair company to fix my credit.
Hold the phone, man. You can do it yourself with Credit Versio.
That's way too hard. Call the credit repair company. Most credit repair companies only work on 1 or 2 accounts at a time, making it slow and expensive. You won't figure that out for months. Ignore him. Credit Versio's brilliant software scans all 3 credit bureaus, finds the accounts that are hurting your score, and guides you through the entire process. Anyone can do it. Let's fast forward and see the results. Wow, I fixed my own credit and saved hundreds. You can do this. Visit creditversio.com.
I'm attorney Clinton Paris, and Tampa's my community. I grew up here, went to school here, and my wife and I make our home here. What makes Tampa special are its people. So when I represent someone injured in my community, it's personal. Call my office and speak to a real lawyer and not some referral service. I will fight the insurance companies to get the settlement that you deserve. At the law office of Clinton Paris, we take the pain out of being hurt.
Maureen is saving big holiday shopping at Amazon, so now she's free to become Maureen the Merrier. Food is her love language, and she really loves her grandson. Like, really loves.
When the stakes are high at work, your tone matters.
Joined by Charles Edmond of the Alcorn State Radio Network. Joining us at the top of the hour, hour number 2, will be the Coach Van Pettaway. Charles, I knew I had the standings present right by me. So before we get into that, we're going to kind of look at the men's standing and the women's standing. Southern and Grambling State in both women and men's action. Grambling State has won 5 straight against Southern and 10 of 11 games in the series, Charles. I mean, hey, a rivalry game is just that. You win some, you lose some. But wow, really? 5 in a row. And 10 of the last 11. What do you think, Charles? Excuse me.
I think, both. I think this is a pick'em game, to be honest with you. I mean, I guess I would give Southern the edge because they're at home. They're playing really well. They won a big one here, Texas Southern, a game in which they were on the wrong end of, and the kid hits a 3 with a hand in his face in game 1. I'm gonna go with Southern at home in this one. If I just had to pick, I think Grambling's playing really well. Like I said, the only blemish was the loss of Prairie View. But when these two teams get together, there's always a lot of energy and action. I think it'll be a high-scoring game, and I think Southern, if Southern continues their good work, I think Southern will win the game. Grambling's my alma mater. I think Coach Jackson's done a nice job there. Again, I always go back to the year that they weren't eligible for the regular season championship, and they won it despite not going to the postseason. He won me over big time, and that still has stuck with me. But and they had a winning record in non-conference. I think they were 7-5 in non-conference. So they're playing really well. So I think this is a pick'em game. It could go either way. I always, in these type of games, you always go with the home team because whistle here, whistle there, free throw here, free throw there could spell the difference. And you get those calls usually when you're at home. So that's the difference. I think Southern would take this one, but I think it'll be a very entertaining game on national TV.
Well, based on what Southern has done the last two games, they're shooting 57% from the field, including 25 or 50 from the 3-point range. Excuse me. And Coach Woods, here's a quote from him: "Our confidence is very high. We're all having fun and sharing the basketball. When you make shots like we are, it solidifies a lot of things." And then Tyrone Lyons, who was named the SWAC Impact Player of the Week after a sizzling week, is averaging 21 points in the last two wins, 13 of 19 from the field, and 11 of 13 free throws. This team is shooting very well in their half court offense. They're moving and spreading the ball. That's pretty good. Now, I think when you're at home, I think you tend, or you want to play faster, more up tempo, and I think when you're on the road, you have to be careful, like a Grambling State. So I'm thinking, and some of you may agree or disagree, they may want to kind of make it more of a half court game. Southern probably wants to get out and be able to do both, run and execute in their half court offense. And then defensively, as much as Southern is playing well on offense, I think defensively they're going to have to come out with one of their better games. Now, you look at the Southern offense, and then like last year, you don't really have. Although I just gave you the stat, Tyrone Lyons, 21 points in the last two games, but overall, they don't really have one scorer that's getting you like 18 or 20 points. But they have a collection of players that are doing well. Uh, Other leaders for Southern: Bryson Etienne, 11.6 points a game. Brian Whitley, 10 points a game. Uh, Point guard PJ Bird leads the SWAC with 100 assists. Now with Grambling, Cameron Christian and Shandaris Coward each gave Southern trouble last year. Christian is averaging 13 points and 5 boards. Coward 11 points. And then they're joined by newcomer Carteret Gordon, 12.3. So you look at this ball game, yeah, I think you can say it's an evenly matched game between Grambling State and Southern. Playing at home, you would think that would give Southern's the edge. But again, Grambling State has won 5 in a row, 10 and 11. This is an opportunity for Southern University to make a statement. I'm not going to say it's a must win, but I just told you Grambling has had the better of these basketball games. Southern needs to come out and make a statement, and that is we're playing great ball, and now we've continued to play, and we have defeated our rival. But it'll be interesting to see about 5:30 how all of the action has gone. That's just on the men's side, Charles.
Yeah, I mean, Southern has an opportunity if they handle their business today, and that both Southern and Grambling are off on Monday. Southern has an opportunity just to sit back and let these other games just kind of fall in their lap. I mean, because Alcorn's got a tough game here, got a tough game against Prairie View. Jackson plays at Prairie View, has a tough game here on Monday. So, if Southern takes care of business, then I think they could be very well in the driver's seat, depending on what happens. However, if Grambling wins, then I think you're going to have a really interesting race, the top 4 or 5 teams in the league, because now Southern's got a loss. We'll see what happens here with Alcorn. They've already lost 1. They lose 2. That puts them in the 2-loss category with some of the other teams in the conference. So I think this is an interesting Saturday here, especially when you're playing your rival. You're off on Monday. You get a chance to see some of these other teams that are on the road. Jackson's on the road. Alcorn's on the road. So you handle your business, and who knows? I mean, Southern might be in first place to themselves, and it'll make the race even more interesting.
Yeah, and we've talked about it a lot. You take care of business at home, and you can go out and at least split on the road. Even if you do a little bit more than splitting on the road, it helps you out. Now, I've kind of was tough on the men's basketball team, but I think deservedly so. What about on the women's side? Coach Funches, it's not his first or second year. Um, the women basketball program, they're always in a conversation. They're they're right there. I think the same as far as Coach Funches. It would be good. It would be outstanding. Hell, it would be great if they could uh, be in the conversation again. Maybe make it to a SWAC tournament finals. But that Jackson State is going to be tough. But this team is kind of like right there, but they're kind of like in neutral to me. They're not going back, but they're not quite going forward. Is it also time for maybe Coach Banks to look at the women's basketball program and I know they evaluate every year. Every AD does that. Boy, I wish Willa Brown was here on today's show and get his thoughts on uh, how do you exactly what are the steps in evaluating the different sports teams. But anyway, Southern women's basketball team, they always in the conversation. They're right there. And is that good enough for the Southern fans and the Southern alumni and the Southern base? But Grambling State is going to be a tough game for Coach Funches and their team. Genovia Johnson, she's just straight up a outstanding ball player. But I think Raven White will be the X factor. She played big in the last ball game in the post. She's about 6 foot, 6'1". Beefy player, can throw a weight around. It'll be interesting. Southern has to uh, win today because, as you stated, Monday they're off, and then they get ready for the next weekend.
Yeah, for me, and you to answer your question first, I think it's a little bit more of a dynamic with Southern. When I look at Southern women's basketball, Southern, they're great, a good half court team to me. When they slow it down, they get in their half court, they run their stuff. I think they're a pretty good team. But if you get up and down the floor and push tempo on them and get into an up tempo style of game, that's not Southern University. And I think that's what you see. That's what, at least to me, that's what I saw in the tournament last year. And when teams get up and down and get into a track meet with them, they have an advantage because Southern likes to slow it down. I think they want to push it, but that's just not Coach Funch's game. So I think for that, I think does it carry into the tournament? I think the regular season, Southern's going to do what they're going to do in the regular season. But in the postseason, can Southern get stops and play their style and slow games down and slow teams down in the postseason, in the SWAC tournament, per se? That's the challenge to me. So I think when you look at it, Roman Banks, and the evaluation, I think the regular season, Coach Funches has done a nice job. But I think that could be a case in which, all right, Coach, the regular season's fine, but now we got to see a little bit more in the tournament. And I think in order for Southern to get there, the women's team, they've got to get more stops on the defensive side, or they've got to get more scoring on the offensive side. If they get a little bit of both, I think they'll have a deeper run in the tournament. But I think that's just the style of game that Coach Funches and the Lady Jaguars have. You speed them up, you got them. You slow them down in a half court, and they just kind of wear you down a little bit. So we'll see. I think for Grambling, I think they like to get up and down. They like to get out and shoot. And so again, I think if this is a slowdown, if the game's in the 50s, it favors Southern. If Grambling gets out and runs, it gets in the 60s and 70s, it favors Grambling. So we'll see which team can impose their will defensively.
Almost seem like, Charles, you're a little more tougher with with Coach Funches than Coach Woods. But maybe I don't know. Maybe I didn't hear you right on that one. But when you look at the Southern women's basketball program, even under Coach Pugh, they were very effective in the half court. Could it be a opportunity for them to, hey, say, we know we're pretty good in the half court, but we need to improve. We need to improve more as far as our up tempo basketball because if you can play both styles, I think it's very helpful. Now, if we look at the Southwestern Athletic Conference standings, you have one team that's on a 4-game winning streak. You have one team that's on a 3-game winning streak. Jackson State leading the conference right now at 3-0. Alabama State 3-1, but boy, that one loss was a doozy to Jackson State. Whew, boy, was it. Southern 3-1 on a 2-game winning streak. Prairie View 3-1. Southern's lone loss to Prairie View and Coach Pugh. They've won 3 in a row. Alabama A&M 3-1 on a 1-game losing streak. Grambling State 3-1. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams at 3-1. Then Bethune Cookman 2-1 in the women's standing. Arkansas Pine Bluff 1-3. Texas Southern, wow, 1-3. 1-game winning streak. Alcorn State 0-3. 6-game losing streak. FAMU 0-3. 6-game losing streak. And Valley 0-4. So Charles, you have a clear cut number one, Jackson State, but then you've got 5 teams, 6 teams jockeying for second, third, and second place, albeit it's still so early.
Yeah, it is early, and that 5-way tie for second. I mean, okay, so you look at Alabama State, you expect them to be there. Southern, you expected them to be there. Grambling, you expected to be there. The teams that were kind of a surprise, more surprise to me of the two, Alabama A&M and Prairie View, is Alabama A&M. There's no Doriana Lewis walking through that door. And I saw them the other night, and they're about as deep as I've seen Coach Richards' teams be. Remember, 2 years ago in the year of COVID, they only had 7 players
Right.
throughout the
Yeah.
whole conference season. 7. And they were very competitive. Then Doriana Lewis transfers to Syracuse last year, one of the best bigs that we've seen. So you wonder, how is this team going to look? This team is bigger. This team is deeper. This team has shooters all over the lot. We just missed opportunities when we played them. But I think Alabama A&M can mix and match with any team in the conference. Jackson State clearly is in a league by themselves, but Alabama A&M is kind of the surprise to me in terms of how they were able to bounce back from 7 players 2 years ago. No Doriana Lewis last year, and you look at them 4 games in, they're 3-1. They're looking pretty strong. You expect Grambling to be there, you expect Southern to be there, you expect Bama State to be there, but Alabama A&M is kind of the surprise. And then even Prairie View, Coach Pugh can kind of sneak up on you. She might have the type of team that she's been looking for. I think she's just had a lot of pieces, a lot of injuries, and I think now her team's starting to round out the shape a little bit. But you expect that from Coach Pugh because she's a really good coach. So, but Alabama A&M to me is a surprise so far through 4 games, 3-1, and we'll see how far they go.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed with Bethune Cookman. Boy, Miss Wilson can really put it up from behind the arc. I think in the next couple of weekends, we'll kind of have a clearer picture of where the race is heading. I think it'll go down to, as usual, the last weekend and conference play. On the men's side, Southern University on a 4-game winning streak, 4-0 overall. Jackson State on a 3-game winning streak, they're 3-0. Grambling State on a 3-game winning streak, 3-1. Alcorn State right behind them, 2-1 on a 2-game winning streak. Then you have Alabama A&M, Prairie View A&M, Arkansas Pine Bluff, and Alabama State, all 2-2 in conference play. Bethune Cookman 1-2, Mississippi Valley State 1-3. FAMU 0-3, and then Texas Southern 0-4. Yeah, you got to think as far as where you're shocked at. Texas Southern picked to win it all. Uh, you know, dead last along with FAMU, 0-4 and 0-3. It is interesting. Can Johnny Jones kind of turn it around, um, or will it be in steps where they turn it around and wow. Injuries? Is it injuries? Is it some internal issues? Um, that's what you have to look at. But this race will continue to be one with parity. And once again, as I stated with the women's side, we'll see in the next couple of weekends come back and look at where this race is heading as far as basketball. And Charles, I kind of looked at the net ratings. That's kind of the net. It's kind of the thing that they use now instead of the the traditional way of seeing where the teams are at. Uh, Grambling State and Southern University, I believe, were the top two as far as, and then maybe I can run and look at it during the break. And then also you saw some other HBCU basketball programs, of course, Norfolk State, even ahead of Southern and Grambling State as far as the net rating. So it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of this conference develops, this conference race. Then, of course, when the conference season is over, tournament championships, will the SWAC, will the MEAC be involved in play-in games? And then the winner gets to go up against the number one seed. So it's a lot of basketball left to be played.
Yeah, I looked at some of that too the other day, and it looks like the SWAC has moved up. The SWAC conference has moved up in that ratings as well. I think 12th, I think it is. Um, And so I think I think that goes back to the non-conference wins, Alcorn beating Wichita State, Stephen F. Austin, Grambling 7-5 going into conference, and some of the other games that we've won, Grambling beating Colorado and those type of things. So if that trend continues, it could very well be we might be out of the play-in situation and just be maybe a 15 or whatever the case. Even though you talk to some conference coaches, they would rather be in the play-in, and that has been a trend change over the last few years. I think that coaches realizing, how that works. They rather will go in through that door rather than to be a 16 or a 15. They rather will go into the play-in, play your way in that way, and then you're going to wind up playing one of the top 4 teams in the country, no matter how you look at it. But I think they rather go that route than to jump right in and play one of the top 4 teams in conference, or maybe one of the top 8 if you're a 15 seed. Hopefully, I'm hopeful maybe we'll get a 14 seed or a 13 seed, and I think that will give us. I would feel really, I might be stretching it a little bit, Carlos. I can tell you that may be a stretch, but I'm hopeful that if we
Yeah.
could I'm a wishful, I'm a positive person most of the time. I'm hopeful that we get to maybe a 14. I know that's pushing it a little bit, but I think we're clearly on the upward trend. I'll say that in terms of getting out of that plan in the 16, we continue to do our good work. But once conference play rolls around, all that I think is, and I've said this for years, it's kind of already determined what's probably going to happen in terms of our seedings. Unless something shocking happens, which it can, but probably won't. Our seeding probably is already our seeding has already have been determined. I think come March. I mean, it's just a matter of waiting for March to roll around. But hey, we'll see in terms of what conference team kind of comes out of that fray. I mean, because I think right now, you read off the standings, you got 5 or 6 teams that are right there. The disappointment, Texas Southern on the men's side. Now, let me say this on the women's side, as far as my team, Alcorn. I mean, right now we're 0-3, and we're in a pickle right now. We've lost one of our players, Ania McAlthea, played one of the players of the week. Destiny Brown has an ankle injury. She's a game time decision. It's been tough sledding for Nate Kilbert. We get 1 or 2 players back, 1 or 2 goes down. And so, right now we haven't been able to crack the win column, trying to learn how to win. We're playing better. We played better in non-conference than we did in conference. Coach Kilbert agrees with that, and that's interesting to say the least. So, my
Excuse me.
team for Alcorn, we got to figure out a way to get in the win column. You got Burnett Skeet, who's a Lady Brave, who played her college basketball at Alcorn. Talked with her a little while ago. They're going to have a tribute here for Shirley Walker right before tip-off. She told me that just moments ago. Because of just what she's meant to SWAC women's basketball, and she's here on this trip. But for the Lady Braves, they got to get it going because time is running out. This team is better than what the record indicates, but as a coach says, you are what your record says you are, and so we got to find a way to get a win. Talking about it, we come up short, but you got to find a way to win some games. I think if we win one, I think we'll win a few, but we got to get that one, and hopefully it's today.
Well, and you talked about in conference, you thought Alcorn State women's basketball team played better in non-conference, but when conference teams, they know each other a little bit better than non-conference. And yeah, it's tough. They were in the ball game against Jackson State, Listen to the broadcast, your broadcast, Alcorn State. Um, I think they just got to keep at it. It's been tough. You know, they've represented themselves well. Hopefully, they'll get some of those players back that can help. But
Take
now,
that away.
now, now would
No,
be going on this road trip. If they can split, I think then
Alex,
that
check
kind of
the
gives them a little momentum. It really does.
Pat.
Um, but it'll be interesting. We'll take a quick timeout. When we come back,
Pat.
we'll
Yeah,
be
what's
joined
that?
by Coach Petaway here on the Coles Brown Show. We'll get his perspective
Call.
on all things swag basketball,
Keep the
and
shawl
then
away.
also we'll go into some of the news from the NCAA that will affect our sports teams. You're watching the Coles Brown Show right here on the Black College Sports Network. We shall return.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids' apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
It's like a loot machine. All around town, people trying to get down. It's like a loot machine.
HBCU League Pass. Watch your favorite black colleges. Some of the best players in the land. HBCU League Pass. It's game time. I'm proud and I love my HBCU. HBCU League Pass. Watch your favorite black colleges. Some of the best players in the land. HBCU League Pass. It's game time. I'm proud and I love my HBCU.
Let's get back to getting ticks instead of watching flicks. Before we can safely get out there, we need the facts on COVID-19 vaccines. Visit getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision for yourself and for your crew.
Nope. Nope.
Come on, him.
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
If you think all pads are exactly the same, think again. This is Always Ultra Thins reinvented with the Always Triple Protection System. This pad wicks gushes 90% faster, absorbs even more so you can feel dry, and locks odors in. Rethink your pad for up to 100% leak-free and odor-free comfort with the totally reinvented Always Ultra Thins. This is always like never before.
Welcome back to hour number two of the Carlos Brown Show right here on the Black College Sports Network. Now joined by the coach, Coach Van Pettaway. Coach, it's good afternoon to you. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine. This is a great day, another day that the man has given all of us, and I'm just happy to be here, happy to be a part.
Well, Coach, we were talking during the break, and um, a lot of weather-related damage in Salem, Alabama, and Godspeed to you going down there. You have family there, and we're going to ask everybody to keep the area, Selma, Alabama, in your prayers because, Coach, I know growing up you didn't, to me, see so many just extreme weather happenings, but it seems like lately you're getting that. So, me and Charles talked about it opening the show. Climate change and global
Yep,
warming.
yep.
It's real, Coach. It is really real.
Yeah, I think the public is seeing that now. You know, they've been talking about it for years, and a lot of people are taking it for granted, but we're seeing the results of it. And you're absolutely correct. Out of all of my days, I have not seen as many weather disasters as we're seeing now all over the country. And
You're
Selma
absolutely right.
just happened to be home for me, and I still got relatives and friends in that area. So we're gonna go down the next few days and see what we can do to help out down there.
Right. Well, audience, keep them in the prayers. The whole area, Coach Pettaway's family, a tough situation, but you know, through the Creator, everything will be all
Oh
right.
yeah.
Um, Coach, before we kind of get into your basketball take, um, I pulled up Division I Council modernizes rules for coaching limits. So quickly, the council voted to eliminate the voluntary coach designation across Division I, instead including those coaches within a new limit for accountable coaches in each of the applicable sports. By adopting the proposal, the number of countable coaches in baseball, softball, and ice hockey increased to four total in each sport. Now, the council rejected an additional increase to five countable coaches in these sports. The council supported an increase of two coaches in men's and women's basketball. And then these additional coaches may engage in coaching activities, but may not recruit off campus. Coach, your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's major. It's a great plus for the schools who can afford to add the coaches. So you got to look at it now,
Mhm.
Carlos. We don't have very many schools in the SWAC that are at that limit now. So
Right.
so the NC2A giving you permission to add two more, that's not going to affect some of our schools because we're not funding them at the max now. But it's great. It the reasoning behind this, the rationale behind this increase, they want more people to be accountable for the players. They
Hmm.
want more help for the players. So you give them more coaches so that these kids can get not only on the court training, but they can be developed off the court too. Because in some of the proposals that they're coming up with, they're talking more about student welfare and student well-being, and that's what these additional people are that's why they have granted permission to add to people because they see a need. Now, there's also a piece that's out there about whether or not the NC2A should be responsible for helping
Hmm.
monetarily with some of the smaller Division One schools, and that would
Yes,
include
sir.
the HBCUs. So I want to see how far that piece goes, and if they're going to do it, most of these changes are going to take effect in the fall. All right. The
Hmm.
other thing that a lot of people have missed out on, they're making it mandatory now that you come up with a nutritionist and training table for these athletes. A lot of our
Hmm.
programs don't have that. We
Right.
don't have that. All right. And then on the academic side, that I've been saying this for years. It has to be legislated in order for our schools to actually do it. On paper, we do a lot of things, but in actuality, it's not really done. For instance, in academics, How many counselors do you really have just for your athletes? At Alabama A&M, we got one and a possible. It's like spades, one and a possible. You know, so see now
Yeah,
how is that? Now I'm not talking about basketball. That's for the
right.
entire department. So how can
Mhm.
two people or one and a possible do an entire athletic department correctly? That's why so
Correctly
many
can't.
mistakes are made. Mistakes are made a lot of times. People are not intending to make the mistakes. They're so overload that small things fall through the cracks. And I've seen that all over our league, all over the MEAC. That's what happens at a lot of our schools because we have not properly funded the positions that are needed to take care of the number of athletes that we now have on our campuses.
So, coach, it's a resource issue, financial, that our schools can't get it done, or is it that I don't want to say they refuse to do it, but it's more of a resource situation, and those that can commit to financially getting more, they will be successful.
Right. They're the ones that are going to have the edge. They're the ones that are going to have the advantage. Um, we had to go back to something that Dion said before he left Jackson State. You got to start at the top to find out what's stopping all these different issues. You know, he don't remember he started at the governor and worked his way down to his campus. So
Mhm.
I think a lot of schools need to do that. You need to find out where does the ball stop rolling. You know, they got these things out there that are for the athletes to make collegiate life a lot better for them, but a lot of the schools are not doing what they need to do to facilitate that. So where does it stop? I mean, where does the funding stop, or where does it even begin in some cases? So
Well, we know.
I think the
Well, we.
biggest thing is they
Mhm.
need to legislate and say if you cannot do these things, these are the minimum requirements we're going to have. And if you're not going to meet them, find another division to get in. Not not
Mm.
not league division. Drop down. Move to
Well,
NAIA.
that's been put out before, and then we know from a historical standpoint, states haven't funded HBCUs like they should have. So when you're meaning about from the top, starting from the top, well, I would start there because I'm sure they have underfunded our institutions.
Absolutely.
Now, dropping down, coach, and my colleague, I think about Dr. Cavill. He did a study one time, and basically the information that he put together to give to them, that was kind of mentioned about maybe looking to drop down. But pride is is
Yep.
one of those things. No, I'm not going to drop down, but if you don't have the resources to compete and be the best at your level, then that is an option, as you stated, Coach. Um, Coach Pettaway, any other things as far as with that part? Then I want to get to the transfer portal because there also some news came out about that from the NCAA.
Right, right. To me though, that was the bigger the part, the academic piece, adding the staff members, uh, and then making sure that they have career development programs in these athletic
Mhm.
departments, so that these kids will be on track after their athletic careers are over with. So I think that's a step in the right direction. You just got to find out how these different things are going to be funded, and we just need to get on with the business. In athletics, we're supposed to be all about the business of making sure that these athletes have a good experience while they're on the collegiate campuses. And when you're not funding them, when you're not giving the kids the basics, you're not giving them what they need, then you're gonna have problems. You're not gonna get the big NIL deals on our level. But I think all of our schools should at least have cost of attendance. Cost of
Mhm.
attendance, a lot of kids, a lot of kids to If they qualify for Pell Grant, let that be their money, and don't make it a part of their scholarships. That gives that kid money that they can put in their pocket each semester, and I think that's only fair. And if the
Yeah.
schools cannot afford to do that, then I really think they should consider doing something else.
That is going to be interesting. And I thought I read it's so much more to read. The
Yep.
NCAA has different committees. Help me out, Coach. Did I see something about some recommendation that after student
10
athletes
years.
plan days are over with, to
10 years.
to pay for insurance
School.
purposes? Yeah, school. Okay,
You got
but
school and insurance, right? But now the insurance is for like maybe I think it's like 2 or 3 years after they're
yeah.
finished. But
Hmm.
but now for in terms of their education, you got to put money aside for 10 years for that athlete to have an opportunity to come back and get their degree, his or her degree. And I think
Hmm.
that's outstanding. I think that's wonderful because we're supposed to be that was the purpose of them going to college to get their degree. And if what they're doing on the athletic side does not allow that kid to get that degree in his 4 or 5 years, give him or her that opportunity to finish at a later date. And I think that's outstanding. So now, how many of these schools are going to be able to put that in escrow? How they going to put it in
Mm.
escrow when they're not even funding all the sports now?
It's gonna be tough.
You're not giving kids the we have schools that well, no, I'm not going to talk about the school at Alabama A&M. We don't fund all our sports now with the minimum required with the maximum allowable scholarships. We got plenty of sports up there, and I kept telling you all now until the last 3 years, men's basketball was never funded with all of their scholarships.
Hmm.
The success we had
Wow.
was with 10 scholarship players. When you see me with 15, those are walk-ons or people on academic scholarships.
Wow.
So
Oof.
having an opportunity for that student athlete to still be able to get their education, I think that is outstanding. And then the
Yeah.
fact that some injury stuff may come up later after they finish playing in terms of injuries, and you have to compensate for that, I think is great. Now
It's
we're
great.
looking out for the
Mhm.
student athletes.
Well, I agree with you, Coach, and those are some of many
Yep.
recommendations that's coming forth. And you could probably do a whole show just on, excuse me, what we talked about. Um,
Yep.
and the coaching limit rules takes effect July 1st. Now, transfer waiver guidelines.
Yep.
Uh,
That was a
I don't
biggie.
think any of us on this show are surprised, Charles, that they were going to do something, because you've had some student athletes have transferred 3 or 4 times, and I'm not just talking about extra eligibility. Granted a 6 year from injury. So
Hey, hey, Carlos, it was
yeah,
unrestricted free agency.
well, that you know what, Coach? That's what I said. Free agency has come
Right.
to college athletics, and I know some people probably say, "Oh, there you go, Carlos. You're always looking for the negative and not the positive." But Pandora's box has been open now,
Yep. Yep.
and the big boys. That's what we point to. The big boys. They're the ones that did it. Now you have HBCUs trying to, you know, get into this realm of what's going on, but they're not. It's the rich, the haves, and the have-nots. Okay, Coach.
Right.
But
Right.
um, the council voted unanimously to update guidelines for the waiver process for undergraduate students who are transferring for a second time. Now,
Right.
each waiver request will be evaluated on a case by case basis. But moving forward, student athletes must meet one of the following criteria to be granted a waiver to compete immediately. One, a demonstrated physical injury or illness or mental health condition. mental health has been a hot topic, particularly,
Right.
you know, you know, before or during the pandemic and after. That necessitated the students transfer, and then you have to have supporting documentation, care plans, and proximity of the student support system will be considered, or circumstances that clearly necessitates a student athlete's immediate departure from the previous school, e.g., physical assault or abuse, sexual assault, unrelated to the student's athlete's athletic participation. All other guidelines will no longer be used for waiver requests to compete during championship seasons that first occur in 2023 and 2024. Charles Edmond, you're not surprised, right? That they were
No.
going to do something to try to put the genie back in the bottle.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be put back in the bottle. All you can do is just slow it down a little bit, and that's exactly what has happened. I mean, it's the train is way down the line on this, but you knew it was coming, and now they put the brakes on it a little bit. So now what happens next? What's the next step on this? How is that going to impact our schools as coaches are trying to get players out of the transfer portal? I mean, if you just look at football, look at the needs of all of our teams. How many of our teams need a quarterback? How many of our teams need a running back? I mean, in terms of how is that going to impact the quality of transfers that are out there, and will that slow down? So I'm anxious to see this next phase of it. I don't think it's going to impact us because I think there's still a lot of good quality talent out there. But you knew this was coming. You knew this was way out of control, and maybe they acted a little late on it. Maybe this should have been done 6 months ago. But nonetheless, they acted on it, and we'll see. There's going to be some pushback on it. There's no question about that. Once you get into the weeds of this legislation, some of the big boys, as you talked about, they're going to push back on this. So I'm anxious to see I'm anxious to see the next piece of this. But it was way out of control, and I think it was just a matter of time before it was going to be legislated and slowed down, and that's what we got right now.
Coach Pettaway,
Yeah,
but
because
it says for the second time, not the first time,
right.
but the second time.
Right. Yeah, because see, you had kids who were multiple transfers, and to me that wasn't right. That's more like professional sports where you are actually a free agent, where you just go, you pick the team that you want to go to, and you go and cut a deal with them, and I just think it was wrong. I'm glad the NC2A moved in on this, and that's going to help all sports because now the kids are going to have to stick it out now. Now, if that child is being abused or if something's just really wrong with that person being there mentally, yes, let that student athlete go. But to say that I'm leaving because I didn't get enough minutes, come on, man. That you got to work. The kids got to. This generation has to learn that you get what you earn. You have to work for it. It's not supposed to be given to you. I've never told a kid they were going to come in and start. I told them they had an opportunity, but they had to put the work in. And then when you give these kids these loopholes, they're not going to put the work in because they'll say, well, if they don't play me, I'm just going to leave. And that's what that opportunity, that's what this transfer portal did for a lot of these kids mentally.
Yeah, and Coach, that's kind of we talked about this last week. I don't know if you had probably left, I think, or some technical issues, but I've often wondered when you hear about players that leave, for example, at Alcorn, and I've seen players as they walk out the door, and I just wonder what happened. Was it all about playing time or lack thereof? I mean, as a coach, is it the coach's responsibility to keep up, regardless of the sport? Is it the coach's responsibility to keep up with the mindset of that student athlete all along the way? If they're not happy with something that's going on, it could pivot in a minute. I mean, is it the coach's responsibility to keep up with that kid's mindset if they're not happy? Is it the kid's responsibility to talk to the coach to say that you're not happy? Is it up to you as the coach to read minds and to see the body language if this kid's not happy for whatever reason? It may be lack of playing time or something else. I just, that's my biggest question as to why kids transfer, because you put a lot of effort and energy and resources into getting that kid here. And then 6 months later on the back end and the season's over, you have your meeting with with that player and they tell you that you're transferring. Like, what happened? I mean,
Right.
you didn't have any issues. I didn't know that you had issues. That's
Right.
kind of the thing that gets me. Like, what responsibility is it? Is it the responsibility of the student athlete to let the coach know that things are going sideways, or is it the responsibility of the head coach to see that things aren't going sideways, or that they are going sideways, and you have to catch it in the bud? Because it's usually too late. The players made up their mind, season's over.
Right.
But is there a way you can catch it all along the way? I mean, we're not fortune tellers. It's hard to say, but that's the thing that I always wonder about when you see student athletes transferring. Lack of playing time, something else with the university, this, that, or the other. To me, that's the biggest question, because I think we can catch some of this perhaps as it's happening in real time, but you don't find out as a coach until maybe the back end when the season's over with.
Right. And then, Charles, you're absolutely correct. It's a two-way street. It's part on the player and the coach. First of all, the player's got to be able to talk to somebody on that staff. If he can't talk, he or she cannot talk to the head coach. That's what the assistants are for. Somebody
Position
on that
coaches.
staff, right. If the assistant coaches and the head coach are together, somebody should be able to pick up something. Something's not right. You should be able to see it in the kids' body language. You should be able to see it in if the kid changes during the year and it's not a good change, you got to know something's wrong. Is something going on at home that you don't know about? Is something going on with that kid and his significant other that's on campus or back at home? So you have to know the pulse of your team. And to me, it's not just on the head coach, it's on the entire staff. The staff has to be honed in. That's why in basketball, you
Excuse me.
should divide up the team. Everybody's responsible for three or four of the guys on one team. Then you come together. That's why you meet as a staff. You find out what's going on with the team, with the team. You find out what's going on with your players. And I've seen this, Charles. Some coaches, they have a 10 or 15-minute window before practice. Every player has to come through that coach. Now, whether you open up or not, that's on you. But the coach is giving you an opportunity to find out how things are going, other than basketball. In other words, how are you adjusting to campus life? What's going on in your life? What's going on with mama and daddy? What's going on? Is there anything I need to know about? And see, when they start putting these restrictions on the amount of time you can be around your athletes, that hurt us, man. That hurt us. Back in the day when I first started in this business, man, I was with my kids every day, whether it was in season or out of season. We communicated unless I was off that campus. But now they restrict you to 20 hours a week. You can't do it. I can't just sit around and be around the kids doing free play and stuff like that. How do you get to know them when all you got is practice time? See, that's one of the things that a lot of coaches was against when they came up with this 20-hour work week. That's all you can be around your kid. That's crazy. How you gonna get to know the kid? How's the kid gonna get to know you? Because when you only restricted 20 hours, you try and get your work in. Because that's all you got. So I think some of the rules that they put in, it hurt the relationship with the staff and the student athletes. Now, everybody was not trying to practice all day, every day. The ones that were going to cheat, they're going to cheat anyway. But the people who are concerned about their athletes, you need time away from competition to find out about that kid and for that kid to find out about you.
Very interesting. Guys, a lot of conversation is going on. I just got a text message. I'll just say my colleague and Coach Pettaway. I'm gonna see if you can answer this one. We always ignore the fact that there are coaches that chase students from a program. I think that's legitimate. I think that
Oh
does
yeah.
Yeah, that does happen. And then that it also in line with that, will we see, and you can address the first part I just talked about, and will we see now more of I say more, but an emphasis of going back to the traditional way of putting more emphasis on recruiting that high school talent, getting it in and developing it. I think Coach Sanders had, what was the rule? 40, what was it? 40 and 20%, 40%. Someone could come in and impact your program right away. I can't remember what the other 40% was. And then 20% high school athletics. Well, let's put an emphasis more, you think, across the board, college sports, of maybe getting back to those student athletes out of high school that some feel and the parents feel left out.
No, I think long as that portal's there, it's going to hurt the high school athlete. Long as they had a transfer
Mhm.
portal, because what coaches are looking at in the portal, you've got an athlete who has already been in the college life, so they know
Ready.
how
He's
to
ready.
get correct. They know how to get themselves up on their own. They know how to go to class. They know how to progress on a collegiate campus. Whereas a lot of times the high school kids, there's a big adjustment because mom and
Hmm.
daddy was getting you up to go to school. Mom and daddy was making sure you did your homework. Well, see, now you're on your own. But to that first part, yes, I'm not gonna sit here and say I know of plenty of coaches who, if a kid does not turn out athletically, they find ways to get rid of that kid now. Even they'll use their team rules, or they'll just make it so hard on the kid that the kid will just go ahead and transfer because they want the scholarship. Yes, that's out there. I have never run away from that or hidden the fact that there are coaches that do that. But I do know this: there are more coaches that care about the well-being of the kid or that athlete than they are about trying to run them away. You
Hmm.
got the scale is weighed more towards people that are doing things the right way. But if you need a scholarship, yeah, some coaches have resorted to that. Well, they get
And
rid of the athlete because they feel
mhm.
like that. But you better have it documented now because they do have the non-renewal period where it used to be by July 1st you had to inform a kid that you weren't going to put them on scholarship for the next year. Then that kid had a right to an appeal, a hearing.
Hmm.
But they tell you even now they don't want you getting rid of a kid because of athletic ability or lack thereof.
Hmm.
That's why you
And
got to do your homework in recruiting.
excuse me.
That's why recruiting is such that's why recruiting is such a integral piece of putting together a program, not a team, a program. And you build a
Hmm.
program with kids being retained in your program. In other words, yeah, that high school kid that's there for 4 years, you build them that way. When you doing transfers every year, you're gonna have a drop off. It's got to happen sooner or later
Yeah.
because the
And
culture is not there.
yeah. And I remember, and Charles, I think you remember this, Coach James, who we had, the head baseball coach at Arkansas Pine Bluff, and I kind of put the same question to him about what's the state of student athletes from the high school level coming to the program. You have to win so quickly. And I'm gonna paraphrase
Yeah,
Charles what he said. He's going to go for the kids in the portal, as you
right.
stated, that already ready, adjusted to college life. He point blank said that's what he's going for. And you talk to parents all the time, worried about their kids. The opportunity or scholarship availability. Student athletes. So I guess, Coach, Pandora's box has been open. Free agency to college athletics, and it's not going to change anytime soon. And
Yeah.
parents are readily concerned about you know getting scholarship. Now, there's also an alternative, Division II, right?
Yes.
Scholarship opportunities. That's going to be interesting. We need to get a break in. Coach, can you stay over with us?
Yeah. I'm good.
Okay. Also, standardized test requirements for initial eligibility. The
It's
council
been
voted
waived.
to eliminate test scores
Yep.
requirements for immediate eligibility for incoming freshman student athletes at the recommendation from the NCAA Standardized Test Score Task Force. We're going to hold it right there. Coach and Charles, your comments when we come back on that. You're watching the Carlos Brown Show right here on the Black College Sports Network. Okay, I guess we don't have a break right now.
Okay.
Let's go into it, Coach. Oh, there we go.
Another shot.
One enemy remaining.
Can I get the now bar, please? $1. Have a good one.
Got it.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey.
Let me get a now bar.
Sure. $1.
Appreciate you.
Got it.
One bite of 100% Angus beef ballpark frank, and you'll say, hello, summer. Oh yeah, it's ballpark season.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavill of Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
For my people that don't get to see me, trying to remind you who you are, just like in Romans 3. See, we about to blow across the world just like a day that's breezy. This motivation for the people, and this classic Bible teaching say, make this for my people that don't get to see me, trying to remind you who you are, just like in Romans 3. See, we about to blow across the world just like a day that's breezy. This motivation for the people, and this classic Bible teaching, motivation.
Coach, I think that was in Jackson, Mississippi on that. Believe it or not, I don't have the win now, but I used to play the tuba in high school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you got to have a lot of wind, boy, a lot of wind. Now, that wouldn't be the case. Welcome back to the Carlos Brown Show, visiting with Coach Pettaway. I'm sure Charles will join us back shortly. Before the last break, I talked about the standardized test requirements for initial eligibility. Basically, the eligibility for incoming freshmen student athletes have been eliminated. What do you think is going to be impact with that, Coach?
I think it was a great move. A lot of coaches were against that, and back in the day, John Thompson and all, and those coaches, they really thought it would impact the black athletes, and that test can be unfair to a lot of people. So I'm glad that they've gotten away from that as being a requirement of eligibility, and I think you just see more kids now who wouldn't have had that opportunity that will be able to get a scholarship or go on to college and be eligible.
And Charles, being around having educators in my family, um, I'm sure you've known somebody, even you, Coach Petaway, that maybe didn't test well. Some
That's
people,
well, right.
yeah, but boy, once they in that class they get everything else done. Some people just simply, and I know it's some would argue culturally biased those tests, um, but it's going to be interesting. Charles, your
Yeah.
thoughts on the test requirements being waived?
Well, I tell you what, as I know someone that didn't test well as a standardized test and went on to have to do pretty well. His name was Charles Edmond.
Oh,
Yeah,
Charles
wow.
Edmond scored.
I knew you were going to say
Charles
that,
Edmond
Charles. Yeah.
scored. Charles Edmond, and for those who might not know, and I share this story from time to time. Charles Edmond barely got school. Charles Edmond scored a 12 on the ACT. And if it wasn't for the fact that Grambling State University was a university where everyone is someone had an open admissions policy at the time, they let me in, but I had to take remedial classes the first semester and test out of the remedial program to be a regular student. Now, I did that, and the rest is history. But standardized tests, I just didn't do well on those things. I didn't even study for it. I didn't even try. I'm just gonna be perfectly honest with you. Didn't take the
Oh, Charles,
SAT prep course. I'm just being honest.
I understand.
I didn't do it. I didn't get it done as far as that was concerned. But it was what it was, and thankfully I was allowed to get in, and thankfully I was able to take advantage of it. But yeah, I think those the standardized tests, it's a crazy thing, and I'm glad that we're kind of reining that in a little bit, because that doesn't reflect a student athlete's or a student's smartness or intelligence based on a test. And I think you're seeing some of the Ivy League schools do it. I was reading not too long ago, some of the Ivy League schools are waiving or reducing the scores on that because I think they understand. I think it's just the way times are now. You just cannot turn down a student based on a score. Now, you still have those traditional universities that are still weighing heavily on the scores, but I'm glad that we're backing off of that a little bit too, because that does not reflect a student's intelligence or not, just based on a standardized test score.
Well, Charles, I'm gonna be honest. I never knew that about you, man, and you're living proof that that doesn't work, man. You can give somebody an opportunity, and they can take advantage of it, man, because you a well spoken person, man. You do a great job, and that's awesome, man. And maybe that'll help somebody out there, man, who is in the same boat. I do know of people that just have a hard time to study, like in college or in high school. We didn't have a study group. In that study group, these kids, everybody gets it. But now when you break off and it's time to do the test, they just it's a problem for them. And I've seen people like that, man. I've seen people score A in the study group, and then when they have to do it on their own, they don't do so well. So Charles, you are right, man, and that's amazing. That's an amazing story. Charles, more people need to hear that, man, because that'll give some other people hope. They'll get an understanding that you can be someone because you have had an outstanding career and you're doing a great
Yeah,
job.
well, I appreciate it, Coach. And I don't know if there was any. I mean, there was no other school that was going to take me with a 12 ACT score, and my sister-in-law made, I think, the same score, 12 or 13. So there are cases like that. Just a matter of who wants to talk about it or not. I don't have a
Right.
problem with talking about it because I come, both my parents, God rest their soul, were retired educators. My mother was an elementary school teacher. My father was a math teacher. And so, I knew 1+1, but, but in order for me to graduate from college, I had to take a trig class that I absolutely had no idea
Oh,
how to get through that class. And I had a professor that was he was a foreign professor that you had a hard time understanding his teachings and what he was saying, and it just so happens that he had grace and mercy on me and a few other people that were trying to graduate that last semester, and he said, "Look, if y'all don't get it together, me and a few others, you're going to flunk this class and you're not going to graduate." So what he did, he cut us a deal. He said, "Tell you what, you and these 4 or 5 others, you all get together and you have a choice. You got to come to my class at the usual time, but we're going to have a session either at 7 a.m. or
Yeah.
a session at 4 p.m. You all get together and decide which time." And this was the last 3 weeks of my semester. And he said, if any one of you all miss this session, you're going to flunk. And for the last
Wow.
3 weeks, none of us missed a class. And we tried our hardest to understand the stuff, and we got through it, and the rest is history. But there are those cases in which some people don't test well, some people don't do well in those type of is that on them? And I'm glad that, I'm glad there's some backing off of that a little bit.
Right. But
yeah,
that's an
because
outstanding instructor, man. Outstanding instructor for doing that.
and that's interesting. I think Charles, you could talk to a lot of people who have the HBCU experience as you're talking about that. Um, with me, it was more of confidence or the lack of confidence in math, but had an instructor at Southern University. I believe she was of Korean descent, and it made sense to me how she explained it. She said, "Make sure you come to class. I'll work with you. You work with me." And she said, "My English is not too good, but guess what? I Something went off. I understood it, and I got a B on that first test. Oh boy, I was strutting like a peacock. But I got that confidence because
Yep.
that math issue was something that some people have to deal with. Now
Yep.
I'm gonna use my colleague again, Dr. Cavill. I'm sure he didn't make anything less than an A in math his whole time in in uh,
And, and,
in high school or
and full
college.
disclosure, math was my worst subject, man. I was afraid of math. It was my
Me
worst
too.
subject.
Me too, Coach Petaway. I was afraid of it, but I got that confidence. But a good
Hey, if
instructor
you find
will
Willie
make a
Hayes, my
difference.
longtime assistant, he has a limp right now because when he sits next to me on the bench, I would always, I talk with my hands and I would always hit his knee, asking him what's the score. I want the margin, because because I've looked at a scoreboard too many times and got the margin wrong, and so I always count on Coach Hayes to make sure that I got the correct margin. But yeah, math.
Yeah.
I mean that's just us, man. Some things we don't pick up on fast. We don't pick up on fast, and math was one of the things that I struggled with. I could make A's in everything else, not math. Never in my life have I made an A in math.
Yeah.
Well,
Other than basic addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, that's all I could do. I can't do anything more than that. Trig, geometry, all that stuff. That was completely intimidating to me. Completely.
yeah.
Yep.
So I think we all can show some empathy and sympathy and all that for those who uh, go on and go to college and make it through. Isn't it interesting? You always have to overcome some adversity, whether it's in the
Yep.
classroom or on the athletic playing field.
Yep.
Speaking of adversity, Coach, let's hop
Yes.
into some basketball. Um,
Man, that was
Charles
exciting.
Charles kidding me about Coach Woods. He's not listening to me, but I kind of put the pressure on him. Right now, Southern University is sitting on top on the men's side, albeit though, Coach, They were at this point this time last year, I believe.
Yep.
4-0, and then here comes Grambling. But let's talk about on the men's side, and we'll get into the women's side so far.
Okay, you want to do the men first? Okay, well, on the men's side, I had an opportunity to listen at both games last week where Alabama A&M played Alcorn State. I listened to Charles. Charles, you did an outstanding job. But this SWAC race, man, this is amazing. We got some great teams. We got some great coaches, and to have Southern sitting on top. But you better look at that log jam coming behind them. There are teams that are just, man, they're chomping at the bit. And then like the game of the week, I think today would be Southern and Grambling. You know that's going to be a very big game, and I think that's going to go a long ways as to what team is going to be able to pull this thing off or get the upper hand. You know, with Grambling going in there, and I think that game is at 3:00 today. But last week was just outstanding. When you look at last Saturday, Alcorn took care of Alabama A&M. Arkansas Pine Bluff beats Texas Southern. Nobody picked that. Grambling was able to hold off Bethune-Cookman. Jackson took care of Alabama State. And, of course, your Southern Jaguars, you all took care of Florida A&M on Saturday. And Prairie View went in the Valley and won. And then the teams didn't get a chance to rest because on Monday night, they had to go at it again. Jackson State did an outstanding job, beat Alabama A&M again in that game, 72-64. Alcorn punished Alabama State, 92-76. They must have made Coach Bussey mad down there because they really got after them in that game. And then Southern, I don't know if Coach Wood didn't like the way Coach was dressed or something, but Southern jumped on Bethune 102-75. And then you had Grambling beating Florida A&M. And then the upset of the weekend was Mississippi Valley taking care of Texas Southern. And then, of course, Pine Bluff beat Prairie View. Now, who would have thought at 4 games in, Texas Southern and FAMU can't smell a victory? I don't think anybody picked that. No one picked that, Carlos.
I didn't. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to raise my hand. And, you know, what's going on with Texas Southern? Charles is in Houston right now. You know, pick to win it all. You know,
right.
It's just tough.
Well,
They're going to have to overcome some adversity. Go ahead, Charles.
Well, yeah, I talked to Johnny Jones yesterday, and he said injuries. His point guard, his center's point guard. I mean, we all know, and I know it's an excuse, but you know, when you don't have when you lose your guard or guards, it's like your quarterback in football. It is a very, very difficult situation. Now the Southern game was a situation where they missed the back end of a 1-and-1, and the kid stepped into a 3 and knocked it down. That's just a basketball play. I mean, if you got a contested hand, if he knocks it down, you just got to tip your cap. But, you know, I think for Texas Southern, the injury bug, I do think a couple of big transfers. Rosas, the kid from Texas Southern, transferred to Prairie View. That was a huge loss. And then ETN, who's at Southern University. I think with the injuries plus those two, I think that is kind of the reason why, in part, I think that's part of the reason why Texas Southern's in that boat. That leadership, that scoring, that post presence, that's gone. And so now you've got to figure out a way to get it done with, despite the fact that you got some kids banged up. And Coach, I said this in the last hour, I think Texas Southern's postseason is going to come down to these next 2 games. They're 0-4. They lose. They're 0-6. They go to Alabama next week. Now, if you go back and just look at data, I know we talked about Dr. Cavill again, but we look at data. Last year, the 8th seed was 8-10, okay? It was Prairie View and Alabama State. Prairie View got the 8th seed on the tiebreaker. So if you use that again this year, if Texas Southern loses these 2 games, I mean, even if they only win 1-5, 0-6, it doesn't really matter. You're still in a whole lot of trouble. And you got to get a whole lot of help. And you got to go on the road to Alcorn. You got to go to Jackson. You got to go to Alabama. You got some tough games, and you got to hope a lot has to happen. Then you got to get right. And it's been 60 years since they were 0-4 in conference. I guarantee you, for this program, for Johnny Jones, for Dr. Granger, the AD, and everyone that follows Texas Southern, this is very unfamiliar territory. And if they drop these 2 games, I don't know emotionally or mentally if they can get get off the mat from this because the games are too tough. Too much has to happen. A lot that's out of your control. And just to finish in the top 8, is it possible? Yeah, on paper you can scribble it down, but realistically, can Texas Southern get off the mat after starting 0-6 and making the tournament? Is it possible? Yeah. Is it likely? I don't think so. So that's why I think these 2 games at home can get them halfway back on level before they go to Alabama.
Right.
Well, I'm a switch roles, Coach Petaway. I'm gonna be the positive guy. Take Charles's role. The journey of 10,000 steps starts with the first step. Don't give up, Texas Southern. You can one game at a time. Take it one game at a time. Don't look too far ahead, because if you do, you'll see darkness. One step at a time.
Yeah, well, look, they're going to see darkness because once they get through with Alcorn, then you got Jackson State on Monday. Jackson State ain't
Yeah,
playing.
it's
You
tough.
got Coach Williams down there, got them playing like lights out basketball. They're doing a great job. So you're right, Charles. Texas Southern might be in trouble. This is a very
I
crucial
tried.
weekend for them, and they're playing 2 of the better teams in the SWAC now this weekend. So you got 2 good teams coming in, and you got to try to right the ship. That's going to be tough now. Not saying that they can't get it done. It's just going to be tough.
And I just saw Alabama State and A&M, and making that trip over there. Those are 2 very improved ball clubs. Alabama State is very athletic, probably as athletic as I've seen. Alabama A&M's the same way. There's no guarantee if Texas Southern goes to Alabama 1-5 or 0-6, they're going to come out of Alabama with a win, and then definitely they're in trouble. So I think it comes down to these 2 games to get back at least on halfway level, some solid footing before you hit the road.
Yeah,
Tough for Texas Southern. I think that's the consensus between Coach Petaway and Charles Edmond. Southern, Jackson State, Grambling State, and Alcorn. Those 4 teams. Let's do this. Then we're going to go to the women's side. We kind of do a little thing about reset. We know Texas Southern was picked to win it, but Coach Petaway, reset. Me and Charles kind of did ours already in our number 1. Who is the number 1 team right now on the men's side in the conference? Reset. In other words, 1, 2, and 3. We know Texas Southern was preseason picked to win it. Of course, they're not number 1 right now because they're in last place.
Right,
but who would be your number 1 team?
I guess it would be Southern. So
I knew you was going to say that.
Right. Southern's playing better than anybody right now. They've gone on the road and then they've maintained at home. So I just think that right now they're playing the best basketball. You got Grambling, who showed in the preseason that they were ready to play, and so now they seem like they're back on track. So it's just, man, you just got to play. You got to play. And Prairie View's not far behind. So Southern was already picked in the top 4 in the preseason. Grambling was picked. I think Grambling was up there. But Jackson State is the team that nobody had picked. I guess with Mo taking over that job, they didn't feel like he had enough time to get in there to get him some players. But Mo is fooling everybody because I think he's even playing differently than he played when he was at Alabama State. I mean, he brought a couple of players with him. He brought a couple of players with him, and they've changed their style of play. And that has proven big for them. So I hope I answered that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, that's fine. Jackson State and Prairie View. I kind of put them in the category no one's really talking about them, but I guess we'll just watch those 2 in the next couple of weeks. On the women's side, it's a log jam there as well because Jackson State 3-0, but then you got Alabama State, Southern, Prairie View, and them Alabama and them Grambling State, and then you even throw Bethune-Cookman in there, who got their first loss to Southern University. We said earlier it's Jackson State, but
everybody else.
A lot of competition for that 2nd spot and that 3rd spot.
Right. And I want to ask Charles this because he's been in the league a whole longer than I have. Charles, has there ever been a dominant, a women's team that has been as dominant as Jackson State? Because, I mean, I remember the teams that Alcorn used to have, but I just don't remember them like going undefeated and losing just one, no more than 2 games during the regular season. Has there been another dominant women's team that I missed? This dominant?
Ooh, no, no.
Mm.
I mean, I think Jackson's won 40 some conference games in a row, if I'm not
Right, that's
mistaken.
what I'm
They
saying.
Yeah, that's
Mm.
no. To answer your question, no. I mean, I remember the
Okay.
Shirley Walker teams that were really
Right,
Mm.
good, but just the level of dominance, intensity, well, the dominance in terms of just dominating teams. No, I can't think. I can think of the Southern teams with Coach Pugh. I can think of the Grambling
right,
teams with Pat
Coach
Gibbs going
Bibbs,
back.
yeah.
I can think of the Lady Braves with Shirley Walker. I I would, if there was anything close, I would say Cynthia Cooper maybe at when she was at either Prairie View or Texas Southern, but maybe not at the
Mm.
level of what we're seeing right now. So to answer your
right,
question, Coach,
right.
I think what Jackson is doing right now is on a whole nother galaxy in terms of how they're able to do it. And some people, Nate Kilbert, our coach, talked about it like with no Misha Williams Holiday, they would take a step back. But you see where they are right now. I mean, they just
Right,
dominated Alabama State. I mean, they beat them by almost
right.
50
And
by
A and
50.
M, and A and
Yeah,
M, they did A and M
yeah,
worse. So that's
yeah.
what I'm
So,
saying. When you can hold an opponent to 2 points in one quarter, come on, man,
Mm.
yeah,
that's balling. That is
yeah.
balling now.
Yeah,
Well,
and we
So
talked about
so
in the last hour, Coach. Jackson State may be even tougher to defend because you have so many other pieces, so many other weapons. You have more weapons to
right,
deal with instead of just dumping it into Amisha Williams over the years. They've got 3 good centers that can put the ball in the basket, and they've got good perimeter play. So they could be a tougher team to defend. You really have to play well, and I think Jackson's got to be off their spot to have a chance.
yeah,
well,
yeah, yeah.
you guys may be looking at that. That's why I'm not even looking at the team number one. The battle, the race, the interest gonna be for 2, 3, and 4 with the parity right there, right in the middle. And don't sleep on Bethune Cookman, man. Miss Wilson, she transferred in from Indiana. She can hit from beyond the arc. So the biggest question is who's going to get second. I There you go. I put it out there. Who's going to get second? That
Well,
is an answer we'll
well,
have
right,
to watch for.
right. That's something we got to watch. But on the women's side, Jackson State at Prairie View, I think that's a big game today.
Yeah,
That's a big game today.
Yeah.
Jackson State takes it on the road.
Yeah, I mean, you got 2 veteran coaches that know how to coach. I think Coach Pugh's got the kind of team that she's really been wanting since she's been there. I think it'll be a good game, but I just think Jackson just has too much
Oh,
firepower. I mean, again, I think
I
it's going to
agree.
take Jackson being a little off, and you have to play really, really well. I think that's what it's going to take, and either one could happen on any given night. But Jackson has a lot more to defend this year than what they've had in uh in years past. So I would say, Coach, I'll say the surprise we talked about in the last hour. Your team, Coach Richards at Alabama A&M, no Doriana Lewis 2 years ago, only had 7 players for most of the year. And now they're. I mean, I counted the bodies that she's got about 13 or 14 deep over there. And so there's a
Right,
lot more weapons minus Doriana Lewis that can get it done. So I think that's a team to watch as we roll along.
right. I think this is going to be big for them. They face off against Alabama State on Monday, so we'll find out what where they stand. That'll be a big battle there for second place between A&M and Alabama State on the women's side. And then, of course, you got the rival game, Grambling going into Baton Rouge today.
Yep, and they've kicked it off already. About 30
Oh,
minutes
okay.
ago, it should be probably close to halftime. It's on HBCU Go TV. Yeah, if you want to check it out, both the women's and the men games. Well, guys, we got to close it out. I've got 1 o'clock Central Standard Time, but Coach, I can't let you get away with this. We hadn't really talked too much NBA. Agree or disagree? 2 top teams in the East, the Celtics and the Bucks.
I agree.
In the West, who knows what's going to happen? Is Golden State really in trouble? Agree or
Yes,
disagree?
I
And
agree.
what happens to the Phoenix Sun? Who comes out of the West?
The Pelicans. I think it'd be between Memphis and the Pelicans.
Wow. Yeah, I won't be able to live in Baton Rouge because some people still feel that my number one team should be the Pelicans. I'm flying into Miami. I'm very concerned with the Miami Heat, but hey, they've had a couple of wins. They finally over 500 now, but I don't know, Coach. I guess I've got to take that awful trip again to Miami and meet with Pat Riley and find out what's going on. Well, Coach, we appreciate the time as always, your insight on different perspectives. Safe travels. Godspeed to you
All
going
right.
to Selma. And go ahead, Coach.
Okay, no, I was just going to say, well, thank you guys for the prayers and concerns. And I just want to tell Charles, keep up the good work, man. I like listening to you, man. Keep up the good work.
Appreciate it, Coach. Appreciate it.
And we want to thank, of course, Melody, producer today's show, everyone who tuned in and watched, and keep the conversation going. We're out of here until next Saturday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time for another edition of the Carlos Brown Show right here on the Black College Sports Network. There's that chop. Oh, my goodness. Oh, we're going to talk some football next week, by the way, Charles. So I'm hearing some interesting things. Until next time, as always, peace and God bless.